let's go. I'm starting the recording. So we will have this uploaded to YouTube at some point. But I reckon this is not going to be too short a session, but we'll see how we go. So I'll just quickly take you through what we're going to do. So today, backend, Python. We're going to go through firstly the data model. Then we're going to talk about scraping. And we're going to specifically be focusing on Fab Armory. Wang, welcome Ken. TCG Player API. Connecting all of this stuff up and then integrating this into a backend API. And then this backend API is what the front end is going to call. So it's going to ask for all this information that you've collected and you've done some logic work around. And the front end will then do a couple of things. You'll learn some screens, responsive designs, navigation, and then how to implement different themes. So that's kind of what we're going to do. So we'll start off with the data model. So data, I think, is probably the most important thing that you have to think about when you're designing something like this. I would say that obviously because I manage a data team, and this was most of my role. But I really do think getting the data right really underpins everything that you need going forward. And what you do want to do is try to capture as much data as possible. You never know when you're going to need it. So in our instance, the way we captured all of this data is, I might actually give you a bit of background on what FabFox is about. So Fab is a new-ish card game called Flesh and Blood. It's kind of, if you guys are aware of the space, you might have heard of games like Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! So it's something along that vein. The game itself is fairly straightforward. You play as a champion. You have weapons and you have equipment and armor and stuff like that you wear. And then you have a deck, and the deck is full of spells that you can cast. And the way it works is you're fighting against another champion, and you need to, or a hero, and you need to attack them and defend against them in a turn-based fashion to try, quote unquote, kill them. And you start with a certain amount of life and so on. So that's the basic premise of the game. And each card that we're going to show has something like the cost. So if you discard this, I might start with the top right. The top right number represents how much this card costs you to cast, to use. So 0 means you don't have to pay any resource to be able to use this card. If it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then you have to pay that much resource. The amount of resource that a card is worth is in the top left. So this one has 1. You can have at most 3. So red is 1. Yellow, a yellow bar at the top represents 2 resources, and a blue bar represents 3 resources. So if it's a 6 resource card, then you have to pitch 2 blue cards, or 1 blue, 1 yellow, and 1 red to cast it. And pitching just means you discard that card. Then at the bottom, you have a bunch more things like this is how much it attacks for, this is how much it defends for, and there's a whole bunch of text in here that gives you additional abilities, or sometimes if the card's quite strong, there might be some hindrances. So for example, Enlightened Strike, it costs you nothing to play, so you don't have to discard anything to cast this. But you also have to remove a card from your hand and move it to the bottom of your deck. So you effectively are discarding a card, but you do have the option to draw that card back. So tons of things in this game. We won't really go through it, but what I wanted to tell you there was how we then get to the data model. So what we're dealing with here is an object, a data object called card. And underneath that, you have a whole bunch of different properties. These properties are going to be unique to the card. So you always want an ID, some kind of identifier that you have control over that sits under card. Then you have the name of the card, the color, the cost, the attack, the defense, and the resource or the pitch value, and the text in the card itself, which is this stuff over here. And then you have the variables, the things that can change as part of that all represent the same card, but they have different versions of the card. So that's the printings, or versions if you want to call it. So underneath that, there are a whole number of different things in there. So again, always have an unique identifier, so like a print ID. SKU. So SKU for us is what we use to actually show you what the card is. So up the top, you can see for us, SKU is unique. So U just means unlimited. WTR represents the set, which is Welcome to Wrath. 159 is the number of the card in the set, and RF means the foiling. So this is a rainbow foil version of the card. So you can see in here, we have all of these details. We have a couple of other things. So we also have rarity. So sometimes a card can change rarity. It's quite common in Magic the Gathering to see something like that happen. And I think we've seen this happen a couple of times in Flesh and Blood so far, which is why this sits in here and not up here in card. The image path generally doesn't change between versions, although sometimes it can, which is why we have it in here. And then the price URL. So this is important because different printings will have different value. So a regular print will have a different value to a foil print. And then there are cold foils, which are even rarer. And these different companies will have different prices for each of those. So that's the data model. Did I miss anything, Kian?
No, all good.
Cool. Let me just stop this recording and we'll move on to section 2.